On this episode of the show, I have with me Jared Shepard. He is CEO at Hypori, and we're going to be talking about redefining how the edge works. And we're going to dive in and talk about how Jared and his company are doing that, virtualizing at the edge device. We're going to talk about employee privacy, some protection and security. We're going to talk about running at and in the speed of the cloud. And we're going to talk about some of the use cases. How is this being used, and how is it actually a more secure platform? Jared, thanks for taking the time.
No, I appreciate you guys having us.
Absolutely. All right. Why don't you tell us what the company does before we dive in?
Sure. So Hypori is, you actually kind of already touched on a big part of what we do. But what Hypori is a highly secure virtual mobile operating system accessible from any endpoint with no data in transit and no data at rest. In layman terms, it means that we're essentially a virtual mobile device that we can use any edge device by making it into essentially a dumb terminal. So it only has the ability to render pixels and telemetry. It never actually possesses the data. So it solves for a lot of the zero trust problems that are out there that I'm sure we're going to talk about some of those.
Absolutely. All right. So I guess let's talk about when we talk about redefining how the edge works and talking about running at the speed of cloud. Talk to us a little bit about what that actually means and what the infrastructure is and how it would be in your scenario.
Sure. So, I mean, it's kind of cool because, what we're doing today or what we're doing very well today isn't necessarily what we want to always be doing, right? We want to do more than that. And one of the biggest visions that I've had for Hypori, from when I made the commitment to decide to spin it out of my other company and actually build it, because I know what this technology is capable of, is to redefine the edge, right? And what I mean by that is that I think technology has come to a point, and it continues to march farther and farther to it, to where the power and the speed of the network enables us to have access to elastically configurable resources, cloud, right, from any edge device. And then what we're talking about is we're getting to a point now where this thing becomes the constraint. The amount of processors, the amount of RAM, the amount of storage that you can put onto this device becomes the constraint. And if instead this is simply just a mechanism in which you interact with power, data, speed, bandwidth, then the possibilities become unlimited, right? Like, and at the highest level, what I say is like, okay, if this is a virtual mobile operating system and the whole world is going to mobile, right? More internet traffic than anything else is generated on a mobile device. Apple, Apple's even said they're moving their Mac OS more and more towards a hybrid of an iOS, platform. The world itself is going to mobile. A significant chunk of people under the age of 40 don't even own a PC anymore, right? They do it all on iPads or on their phones, on their Androids, on their Samsungs, etc. And so, if we embrace that idea that the edge is already being redefined simply by usage, then how are we going to maximize that? And what if there's a world that I could provide you a better performing PC than you could go to Best Buy or whatever and go buy from anywhere, to include your 72-inch TV on a wall with a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, faster computer, more RAM, more processing power, more storage power, more bandwidth, because it's running in cloud. So it runs at the speed of a data center, accessible from any edge device anywhere. And this changes from being the most important thing that you walk out of your house with every day to becoming a commodity. And as I give my wife credit for this, because she was the one that caused me to have the epiphany of, like, when we get to the business to consumer side of the house, would be, as my wife said, hey, when can I have Hypori? And I was like, well, honey, we're doing BYOD for the DoD, and we're doing all this other great, really, hard technology, security standards on the edge. But why would you want it? And she said, well, I'm tired of worrying about losing this thing. I'm tired of worrying about what happens if I break it, or if I leave it somewhere, or somebody steals it. She's like, in fact, maybe even more importantly, like, why can't I bring the big one with all the cameras to the kids' events, and then take a little flippy one when I go out with my girlfriends to go have drinks? Why can't I change this thing out the way I change out my purse? And I'm like, oh crap, you could. We could actually commoditize the edge and give you a more performant platform, and all do it for less money. So like, that's what I mean when I say redefining the edge. It's a pretty cool idea.
Absolutely. I guess maybe a use case will kind of help. You mentioned obviously bring your own device, BYOD. You mentioned the military, business use cases, especially traveling consultants who are lugging multiple laptops. I guess dive in and maybe give us a concrete use case of where having this virtualized operating system helps us.
Would love to. Yeah. So, BYOD is probably the most commonly used term right now that would address a big part of what we do. And what we actually mean by that is use your device to access a secure enterprise, right? And a secure enterprise's data in a way in which doesn't jeopardize the enterprise's data, and you don't have to compromise your privacy, right? So like, if this is my personal phone and I'm going to do work from it, well, then it's my business that's on the phone, right? And I shouldn't have to worry about overreach from the corporate enterprise. I shouldn't have to worry about, what apps I put on my phone or what websites I go to. Those are my business because this is my phone. But at the same time, the enterprise can't take risk and allow you to be in possession of data that's critical to its success on a device that could very well have DeepSeek on it or TikTok on it. Right, a known collection platform that is going to be invasive at the least, if not even potentially data theft. Right. So how do you get that balance of enabling enterprise access? And think about what enterprise access means. It's more than just like Outlook and Teams. Right. It's corporate sensitive data. Maybe it's nationally sensitive data. Maybe it's banking sensitive data. Think like SEC controlled trading information that has to be auditable. Think HIPAA-based information sets, right? That have actual legal responsibilities or protection. Or we've seen a tremendous amount of interest and now success in Europe because of data sovereignty. So when you look at data sovereignty or where data originates from, right, you're not allowed to, in a GDPR environment, you can't move someone's personal data from point A to point B without their written permission. Well, what's cool about Hypori? We don't move data anywhere. We can allow you to interact with it from anywhere, but we don't have to move it to enable you to do that. So there's a whole bunch of use cases that we started with kind of the hardest one. We almost went at the problem the opposite the way most companies do. We started with the hardest problem, which was the Department of Defense and in the hardest ways in the Department of Defense, and solved for those hardest challenges, and then are now working our way out and are going into the corporate world.
Is this solution, and out of curiosity, because obviously the solution seems like it solves some of these privacy, security concerns, questions. Is that the, if you were trying to provide the highest value, is that really where the product is really designed to kind of bring the biggest benefit? Or is there obviously being able to, have any device and shift a virtual environment and not worry about your device? I understand that seems pretty liberating, but the privacy, the security components seem like that probably is where a lot of businesses go, aha, okay, that could solve bigger problems.
It's interesting because you're 100%. When you look at the cost and impact of data theft, the cost and impact of breaches, of spillages, of all those types of things, they're absolutely massive, right? So then all of a sudden, when we can come and say, look, I'm the fraction of the cost of you providing your employee a second cell phone, and I'm way more secure, like, all right, that's the cost argument, right? To your point, that's the cost argument. In America, still today, what we've found is that security and convenience are usually the top two priorities of most companies looking at a mobile plan, BYOD plan, mobility, access, et cetera, right? Privacy is still kind of a nice to have in America, right? In Europe, privacy is, if not number one, it's in the top two of their priorities because it's legislated. They don't have a choice. It's the law. And Europe is, I think, farther along when it comes to prioritizing an individual's privacy over corporate right to protect data, right? And what this really gets down to is maybe it doesn't have to be a company's fight versus your fight for whose data belongs on your phone and whose doesn't. What if we can just take that problem set away and say, company's data is yours, your data is yours, right? And these two things should never coexist. I think the methodology or the ideology of, you have to securely transmit data to a device that you can securely store it on, and securely, protect. Well, if we're talking like zero trust methodologies, you just said like three things that all assume security, and that's not what zero trust is, right? If I have to put an MDM on a phone or a MAM on a phone, and I have to trust at some level that that device is doing what it's supposed to do, that's not really zero trust. That's trust.
I like that. It's interesting that you touch on Europe being a little bit ahead of us and some of those data privacy concerns. I think we're slowly seeing it filter through the US, which is good. When you look at something like AI, obviously, and everyone wants to use AI, when it comes to the notion of, and definitely makes sense, the zero trust aspect of what you're talking about. But when you look at AI itself and you look at the cross portability of what happens to data, and you have this virtualized product, where does your product fit in within the world of AI and how AI is actually working, and potentially agentic? Because I think that's really maybe my real question is, how does agentic work when you do have these kind of virtualized environments?
AI, lots of components to AI, lots of implications of what AI does. I love AI, I use it all the time too. But one of the most fundamental is just the fact that when you and I are using AI every day, I'm giving it data, and that is in turn forfeiting information, right? Unless you have a private large language learning model that you've isolated in a network, and then by isolating it in a network, you've limited its ability to learn, right? You have all these challenge sets, but one of the best, at least according to most articles I read, one of the best free AI engines out there is DeepSeek. And if you think DeepSeek is doing anything other than taking a portion of your data and not giving it back to the nation in which it paid for it, you're fooling yourself, right? And in fact, a friend of mine told me, if you don't have to pay for a product, then you are the product, right? And that's a very important thing for us to always be in consideration of. And so you look at like Microsoft. Microsoft came out with their latest version of their AI integrated into the Windows operating system. And then they kind of said, oh yeah, by the way, it is doing a rolling screen scrape of everything that you're doing, so it can learn from you, right? So where's the line? Where do we give back the decision to the user on what they actually do want out there and what they don't want out there, and who actually owns that line? Is it the company? Is it the vendor? Is it the individual? So for Hypori, what we do is I take that edge device away as a collection mechanism. Now, if you're using AI inside of Hypori, then you're still subject to all the implications of using AI inside of Hypori. But I do protect, even if you're using AI on your personal device, I do protect the enterprise from being able to be exposed to any type of AI collection algorithms, methodologies, et cetera. Now, inside of our own platform, like how do we use AI, or how does AI affect what we're doing? Well, I think AI will very quickly become, for us, it'll be a resource management and adaption capability. So we'll use AI to predictively be able to say, hey, I know what Amir's doing right now. I know between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., he almost always logs in at this time. He usually uses these kind of resources. And then you get to a point where AI will start to actually stage those resources. So then when you start to think about the elastic application of resources over time with an AI enabled platform backed by something like the power of cloud, like, can you imagine like, hey, I know every morning Amir has to go run this report, right? He goes and runs an X report. So between this time or this time, or specifically when he logs in and touches this application, I'm going to allocate 32 cores of processors, 64 gigs of RAM, X amount of bandwidth for all of about 90 seconds when he clicks run on this report. And then I'm going to deallocate all those resources back. And so from a cost efficiency standpoint, there's no possible way you could build something like this that has those kind of resources that's going to be cost efficient compared to what we can do, right? And that's where AI will continue to enhance and make this capability even, all the more robust. Also, we haven't really seen it yet, but I think it's a matter of time until we start to see AI actively integrated into networking. And you start thinking about shortest path or least most efficient lowest latency, shortest band, all combination of metrics that you would usually use in like quality of service decisions. I think we're not far from seeing networks begin to integrate that to make sure that the user experience is maximized with the use of AI as well.
Interesting. Wow, that's a great response to the question, because I think as you were speaking about it, and I was thinking about, yes, the fact that you do potentially use AI on a device that's home only, personal use only, and then obviously for work. But sometimes those lines are so blurred that where does that corporate protection, kind of sit? And I think a lot of times when we're talking about cybersecurity, we're always talking about, trying to promote those good, healthy habits, ensuring the assumptions that people are going to do things and they will let things.
The problem is, one is we know that doesn't happen,
yes.
right? But and two is, I don't know that it's fair that an organization puts the cybersecurity burden on the user.
I agree.
Right? It's my CISO who used to be he was one of the first directors of the Army CERT. He used to, Army Computer Emergency Response Team. He's been around cyber for forever. And he gives an analogy where he says, cyber is the one place where you blame the victim.
Yes. Yep.
Right. And we do it all the time. Like, oh, you got hacked. Well, you must have been irresponsible for being hacked. I mean, okay, well, what about the guy who actually exploited you, right? Isn't he the bad actor, right? Or she or they or whatever it happens to be, like, are they the bad actor? Or is the individual who clicked on the dumb link the bad actor, right? And so I think it's a mistake that we allow industry, or we even give industry a pass on the fact that they're putting the burden of their data on the user.
I've talked about the champion in cybersecurity quite often, and the need for it, because obviously you're trying to promote those healthy habits and you're expecting people, like you just said, to be responsible for that. And it's hard. And I get it, because the attack surface area has now just grown exponentially. And
well, and in fact, we didn't touch it, but AI, that's the other aspect of AI that we're beginning to see manifest is, I talk about, AI when I was on a panel not long ago. Look, AI is our generation's version of splitting the atom, right? When we split the atom, is like, hey, it could be used to solve world power or to eliminate the humankind as we know it. I think AI is the same thing. The difference is, unlike nuclear power, which is only available to a very few actors with lots and lots and lots of resources, AI is available to everybody, which means the threats are going to get much more inventive very quickly. And it's going to be harder and harder to put that burden on somebody to go, I didn't know that link looked legitimate, or that email looked legitimate, or that phone call was legitimate, or man, I saw your face. It was you talking to me in that video that said you wanted me to do this.
I agree. Yeah, I 100%. I think that's this attack, the idea of this attack surface area growing and everything being a question. I'm curious, within the product, within kind of the platform, when you do think about the amount of attack surface area that you need to worry about, how does your product handle that? And the reason we just talked about, you mentioned all these different ways AI can be used for nefarious purposes. How does virtualization help us slow that down, or stop that, or eliminate that if it's possible?
I think at the most fundamental way, which whether you're doing virtual desktop solutions or you're using virtualization for mobility like we do, I think the answer for that is that it's reducing the attack surface. It's collapsing the attack surface down to a couple of points, right? You still have internal infrastructure that you have to manage, but if we think about the complexity, the growing complexity of managing an attack surface from a cybersecurity standpoint, wouldn't it be really good if all I had to do was protect the borders, like protect my entry points and exit points, and I didn't have to worry about every single point of presence, physical point of presence, being an attack platform. And that's what virtualization can do, is it can dramatically drop that attack surface down to where if all of the endpoints are actually inside your protected infrastructure and all of your rules that you use to protect your infrastructure can apply to those endpoints, then the outside edge, the unmanaged edge, no longer presents a threat. And it makes things I think, much less complex, or maybe even much easier to apply complex defenses, or even simple defenses, but complex defenses into an enterprise.
I guess with your product, it sounds like it does things that benefit a lot of corporations. I know you mentioned your wife said, where's the consumer side of it? I guess as every service potentially is now under threat with AI, it seems like there's not a darn thing we can mention that go, well, it's not going to threaten. Is there a real threat to like the Hypori product? Because AI could potentially do something that we don't know yet to mimic a virtualized environment and fool us. I mean, at this point, we're still in the sci-fi phase of worrying about AI. I guess. Is there anything that worries you with how it could actually threaten the platform or kind of users?
We could talk for a half an hour about how AI worries me. Look, nothing is unhackable. Nothing. If you're willing to put enough resources against something, you're going to get to it, right? It just simply that's what it is. And usually the metrics of cybersecurity are, did I make it cost you more than it was worth to you to try to get to the information that I'm responsible to protect, right? To take more resources to get to it than what it's worth. Because anything can be gotten to if you're willing to spend enough resources. Look at what was the cryptocurrency where they got compromised and they were like, oh, they actually didn't get hacked. Somebody just walked up and started handing out cash, right? And that's how they got. So like the human component is always a threat. So in the AI side of the house, so Hypori, when I'm delivering a Hypori environment to this edge, we're doing, rolling encrypted delta pixels at about 30 hertz. So about 30 frames per second. We're looking for any missing pixels, and we stream whatever those change pixels are real time to the edge device. They're MTLS encrypted pixels. So that means they're all AES 256. Could an AI potentially collect all that pixel stream, all that telemetry stream, break AES 256 at the individual pixel level, tie the telemetry to the pixel stream, even without our timing source? Maybe, but it would be really, 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 really hard. There's a lot of easier solutions out there that you could go and compromise before you'd be able to do that effectively.
That's very cool. I guess I was going to ask you this as a final question, because, just in case people who are not familiar with building for the military as a stakeholder, that's not always something common for everyone out there. How is it different? And I guess two parts of the question: how is it different? And how it sounds like it's a benefit potentially for a product that's meant for this type of security and privacy. Obviously, they probably have some stringent requirements, but how is it to have the military as a stakeholder, as a customer?
Well, when you talk about the hardest problem set, right? From like, where are you going to get the largest bad guy actors in the world going against your data set? I would say it's probably going to be, the military and maybe banking, right? Those two places are probably the most, I'd say, sporty environments that there are. The military, because the military actually legally participates in both offensive and defensive cyber operations, also has exposure to probably almost every mechanism out there for exploitation, right? And the military is the arm of, if you look at like Clausewitz, right? Clausewitz said, war is simply politics by further means. The military is the extreme version of politics, right? So it is when the traditional political discourse fails, you can then escalate through military means. We're seeing that happen across the world right now in lots of different environments, right? So for us to be robust against that kind of an actor, and then to have to go through the litany of policies, regulations, certification processes. We've been through 15 plus red teams. Yes, I don't know that there could be anybody out there that could go and get more diligence against their product than you can inside the military. Now, the inverse of that is it cost us millions and millions of dollars to do. It took us years to accomplish. And all at the hopes and wish that we could grow and scale out of that, right? So if you're a small business and you're trying to figure out where do I want to start first, starting in the military is probably one of the hardest places to start for those exact reasons, right? And So it's a balance. I think having the military as our sponsor, our stakeholders, and helping us build this product to meet their mission sets, they're the best partner in the world. But good gosh, they can be hard to work for sometimes too.
Well, it seems like it's an interesting intersection of wanting to deliver a specific type of product and having the military as a customer. Definitely, it adds some nut metal to the product, which is like I said, I don't think I run into a lot of people with that scenario, so I thought it'd be interesting for people to hear. So I think that's pretty cool.
Well, it's kind of neat because like when you're doing the stuff in the military, when you have all these accreditations, IL4, IL5, FedRAMP High. You name it, SOC 2, SOC 2 Type 2, all this other stuff, red teams, you have to, all these Department of Defense regulations, NIAP, all this other stuff. The thing is it gives you a huge framework for what security actually looks like, right? And remember, like a certification or an accreditation is not cybersecurity. It's just a snap in time of a specific set of rules, right? But it is something that will get you up to a point where you can actually be secure because it helps you build the framework in which you then have to know how to operate off of.
Absolutely. Fantastic overview of the environment, of the use cases and some of the challenges. I'm sure we didn't cover everything. We probably could have spent half an hour on each of those points alone.
Yeah.
If somebody does want to have a follow-up question or something similar, what's a good way of connecting?
Of course, if you want to talk to me, I'm pretty easy to find. You can go on LinkedIn or that kind of thing, or you can go to Hypori, www.hypori.com, HYPORI.com. Reach out to us, send us a note. We'd be happy to provide you more information. We have some good stuff out there on our website. We got lots of great people on the team who can talk to you if you want to know more.
Absolutely. Jared, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. That's it for the episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. Obviously I'd love for you to share this episode out with others that might find it interesting. Jared walked us through the product, the use cases, military as a customer stakeholder, and some of the challenges that go into it, how the product actually is helping. Mostly what we talked about was from the business perspective, but I think there's a consumer side in there that we probably could have kicked around, but we didn't have time to get there.
Hope so.
Yeah, definitely see lots of potential. So,
we didn't get into there. We could have a whole nother episode on talking about, Hypori versus what? Like, what about MDM and MAM, right? And the implications there. That's actually a long conversation about the cost reward trade-off and implications there.
Well, I think Jared, I think you and I just found a second episode to record, hopefully down the road. So yeah, definitely share this episode. If you guys like it, I think we've got another topic with Jared. We'll have him back on. I think it'd be great. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.